Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell, and I'm going to be talking about the Iranian construction. I'm going to be talking about the Iranian um, helicopter crash, and he died and all this stuff. So I was doing a recording with John last night when the news came out that it was confirmed that he died in the helicopter crash. So I'm going to be playing some videos about the incident and my take on it, okay? Because I think I have a unique perspective. I also mentioned a little bit of hinted on what I was thinking when I heard that of this helicopter crash with John last night. All right, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, to get the health products that I offer. I also have ebooks. I also have made these lecture series on pulmonology and immunology. So please go to the store and get those products. Please subscribe to all my channels. I have 7 channels. I have 4 on YouTube. I have Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. So because I get strikes and you don't get the notification when I'm actually premiering, I try to, have multiple channels so you get the content that, that you should be seeing. In addition, follow me on X and GETTR so you know that I've posted something because people are not getting notifications. In addition, I also have PDFs on my website of some important findings that I think you should be reading about, certain types of topics dealing with medicine or science. Now, also, for the ones that can, please help support my work. The videos I do are free to the public. It's through your donations that allow me to do that. I have thousands of videos that are free to the public. So please donate on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee, and you can be a paid member to my channel on Patreon. That way, my content is free to the public. The ones that do purchase a higher tier level on Patreon, tier 2, tier 3, and tier 4, you'll get different access to my actual lecture series on pulmonology. So, and when I start publishing the immunology lectures, you'll also get some access to that too. So please be helping by being a paid member or donating, or better yet, purchasing the health products that I offer. Pay attention to the protocol that I keep on telling about to mitigate the aftershock from 2020. So with that, please go to the store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. So this is Al Jazeera.
So I think deliberately he didn't want to commit that mistake. It's true that Raisi did fit the profile, even if you look in the way he dressed himself. Almost he was a mini-me of the current supreme leader, and he certainly had the ambition. But I think the key point about Raisi that made him a good successor to the supreme leader is that he was completely subservient and loyal to the current supreme leader, meaning that probably after Ayatollah Khamenei passes, the current leader's office and the Revolutionary Guards would be the ones who would continue to pull the strings from behind the scenes.
One thing about the last presidential election that so whet people's appetite and got people thinking about what Ibrahim Raisi's political future might look like was the fact that there were senior figures on that within that particular election, potential political rivals, both moderates and conservatives, all of a sudden were removed from the list. I mean, that looked very much as if Raisi was being earmarked for a future role at the top of government.
That's true, and the current supreme leader also served as president before becoming supreme leader. Also, by the way, succeeding a president who was killed in 1981 in a bombing. But the reality is that the supreme leader also wanted a yes man. He had years of experience with presidents who had challenged his authority, either because intellectually they were superior to him, like President Khatami, or knew the world better, like President Rohani, or were just troublemakers like President Ahmadinejad. Whereas this guy, President Raisi, was an absolute yes man, and that's what the Supreme Leader liked about him. That's why he cleared the stage for him to be selected, not really elected.
All right, thank you very much, Ali Vyas, for giving us much needed context. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Russia's defense ministry says its forces have taken control of the village of Belorivka in the Luhansk region. Russian forces continue to push into Ukraine's Kharkiv region with aerial strikes, hitting a number of villages. John Holman was in the village of Cherkaska, Lozova, just after a Russian missile attack.
Cherkaska Lozova was a quiet village just north of Kharkiv, where people came to fit.
Let's play Fox business on this issue with the Iranian leader.
In many ways, I love $29 donors more than I love those big, fat, beautiful $1 million donors. I'm humbly asking for you to...
And breaking news this morning, Iran's President Ibrahim Raisi and the country's foreign minister confirmed dead this morning in a helicopter crash overnight in the country's mountainous region. Iran state TV says there was no sign of life following a hard landing due to bad weather and fog. The crash coming as Iran launched an unprecedented drone and missile attack against Israel last month. Joining me now is retired two-star Marine Corps General, Punara Group CEO and author of The Ever-Shrinking Fighting Force and On War and Politics, the Battlefield Inside Washington's Beltway. General Arnold Punara back with me. General, good to see you. Thanks very much for being here. Your reaction to the president of Iran killed last night?
Well, Maria, as you know, for your own significant expertise in this region, this is an individual that's cut from the same cloth as the Supreme Ayatollah Khomeini. This is an individual with blood on his hands for the brutal repression of his own people, the organizer of death squads against women and children to get suppressed dissension. This is an individual that's complicit in the first Iranian direct attack on Israel. And whether it was an accident, as early reports are, or sabotage, like was the case of Zia el-Haq in '88, it doesn't really matter. We've got to keep focused on the fundamentals. Iran has an avowed goal of eliminating the state of Israel and wrecking the United States democracy. We need to be extremely concerned about the progress they're making towards a nuclear weapon. I believe they've got enough uranium now for 3 nuclear weapons, and they're expanding their ICBMs. All the condolences initially are coming from the terrorist organizations that are killing Israelis and others, the Houthis, Hamas, Hezbollah. So, Maria, there is no kinder, gentler Iran coming out of all this, and we need to look at this in the cold, hard reality of daylight.
Well, that's exactly really where I was going here. We know that the Supreme Leader has led chants death to America. Now we see that the vice president is expected to get elevated into Raisi's spot being the president of Iran. What changes in terms of policy with Raisi and the foreign minister out?
Maria, I see no changes because the Supreme Leader Khomeini runs everything. He's a brutal dictator, a brutal repressor of the section, a brutal exporter of terrorism in the region, in destabilization. There isn't going to be any change in the way Iran operates, unfortunately.
So it sounds like you don't think this was an accident.
Well, Maria, you and I have done this for many, many years, and we know initial reports are always sometimes misleading. And again, I remember, Bruno, I was working in the United States Senate when Zia el-Haq, the head of Pakistan, plane crashed in the mountains in bad weather, and everybody said it was an accident. They learned later it was sabotage. But it really doesn't matter, and certainly there would be reason. He's the first Iranian leader to be sanctioned by the United States, so we don't know. But I think we've got to keep focused on the fundamentals, and that is, how do we deal with Iran's aggressive export of terrorism? How do we deal with their inexorable march to having a nuclear weapon, which I think will change the calculus of the balance of power in the region substantially, and we can't let that happen.
And does the support for Hezbollah, for Hamas, and these other proxies change in any way with Raisi out?
It does not, Maria. In fact, as I mentioned, the people that were expressing their condolences early on are the ones that are benefiting from Iran's evil puppeteering of terrorism in that region, money, training, and things like that. Unfortunately, as I said, there is going to be no kinder, gentler Iran originating out of this. It's going to be the same brutal regime that we've been dealing with for many decades.
What do you expect the future to look like in terms of the war on Israel?
Well, Maria, I think we've not been as prepared as we needed to be, and we've not been as aggressive as we need to be, knowing where Iran wants this ultimately to come out. And we've got to continue to be very supportive of Israel and very supportive of their ability to defend their country. But at the same time, we've got to look at the mid to longer term, which is what Iran is doing in terms of their nuclear program. So I think we're deficient on both fronts right now. I'm extremely concerned about it. And I know my colleagues in the military, particularly those that have had responsibility in that region of the world, that are the former commanders of the U.S. Central Command, I know they share these same concerns.
Yeah, at this point, Iran is saying that the first vice president will assume power as the president. You don't think there's going to be any change in policy with regard to Iran being the supporter, key supporter in the Middle East of terrorism?
Maria, I do not, because all the power is with the Ayatollah. He runs everything. The Iranian Republican Guards work for him. He's the head of the evil puppeteer, and nothing's going to change. He's got all the power, and he's going to put somebody in there ultimately, again, just like the President Raisi was cut from the same cloth. It's going to be more of the same, unfortunately.
All right, we'll keep watching that and talk with you along the way. General, thanks very much for your insights this morning.
Okay, I wanted to go to the Times Radio, which I think is a pretty good podcast.
Daphne here has finally stopped squeaking. It's all because of this. We in Israel don't expect much change in his absence. And I think that makes it even more unlikely that Israel was behind his death. He's not because he wasn't an important person.
Yes, essentially you're saying he's a pointless person to assassinate.
In a way, yes, but also, accidents do happen in this region. Not every accident that happens is because of Israel, but in this case, yes, his death is not going to change much.
5 days of mourning have been announced in Iran for President Ibrahim Raisi, who died in a helicopter crash. The first Vice President, Mohammed Mokbar, is taking over interim proceedings until elections take place in the next 50 days in Iran. In a moment, we're going to speak to Dr. May.
Before he goes to his guest, I also have in the description of this video and my other videos, you can join my WhatsApp group, which is growing slowly, but join my WhatsApp group to get updates on important things. And you can also follow me on Apple Podcasts and Podomatic. So the links are in the description of this video.
Mayor Javeen Danfar, who teaches the Iranian Diplomatic and Security Studies course at a university in Israel. But first of all, we're going to speak to Maia Bahari. She is the editor at IranWire.com, an Iranian journalist who was imprisoned in the country and cannot return. Welcome to the show, Maia.
Nice to be here.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. Tell us what you know about what has happened to the president. What happened to the president? What is the thesis in Iran, as it were? Straightforward helicopter crash, or do people think it was something more sinister?
Well, there are always conspiracy theories, but most people who think logically and rationally think that it was an accident. Of course, it's an unnatural accident because the president and the foreign minister both were in the helicopter, and also they were using a very old American-made helicopter, which Iran purchased before the 1979 revolution. So the helicopter was at least 45 years old, and which I think in a normal country, both the president and the foreign minister should not be on a very old plane flying in a very, very bad weather situation. So from what we know, someone from Iran, someone who is a member of the government in Iran, called us around 3 p.m. local time yesterday and told us that the government knows about the death of President Raisi, and they were working on the messaging. So we published the news at that time, and we said that the government knows about the death and they're working on the messaging. And it seemed that our source was right because it took the government about 7 to 8 hours after we published the news to announce the fact that the president is dead. And I think at the moment, they're just thinking about Raisi's successor, and there are some candidates, and it's very important for Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the quote-unquote supreme leader of Iran, to support that candidate, because last time around in 2021...
Just so I can interject, it seems to me that not only is Iran worried about messaging when it comes to major events, the death of or the killing of the Iranian president, or what happened between the rocket attack or the missile attack on the embassy by the Israelis, or the counterstrike that Iran had on Israel and the counter strike that Israel had on Iran. Everyone seems to be worried about messaging. Iran, Israel, United States, all right, maybe even Britain and France. But why? Why can't they just let it be? The reason is that the country is unstable. There's a group that wants liberty and a democracy, and there's another group that wants a theocracy. And it's not so clear cut on how stable the Ayatollah has, how much of a grip, how stable is his grip on the nation. And I think this is part of the problem. Now, the United States wants something stable. They don't really care if it's democracy or not. And this is where our meddling in with the Iranian politics going all the way back to Eisenhower days, is problematic. And the issues that we had with Iran going, into the 70s. So everyone's worried about messaging. And when this happened, when the helicopter crashed, right, there was very little U.S. news about it. Now, it was a weekend, so you had a skeleton crew in the media, but very, very little news. A few hours after the original news announcement that the helicopter crashed, information was starting to be posted on X about him being dead, but the president of Iran being dead, and the is it the finance minister? But there was no one else that was confirming that. So there was this, and then there was the story. Well, there was some call on the radio saying that someone wasn't feeling well and all this stuff. So, who knows? And it was in poor weather. And then after the fact, finding out that it's an old helicopter that we sold to them in the 70s, and then we have sanctions on Iran where they can't get the parts for the Bell helicopter. So things are probably falling apart within that country because of the sanctions. Now, one could say bad weather, old helicopter, poor maintenance that caused this, especially the bad weather. Another part could say that this was targeted by the United States or by Israel, most likely Israel, if that was the case, or some faction within the government. because there's instability that's happening in the government. Remember, this guy's the guy that was killed was marching towards theocracy because he was going to be the next Khomeini, right? So, or, which is what I hinted at when I was talking to John Webb, or not John Webb, John Hogue, mixing George Webb and John Hogue, two totally different people. John Hogue, he, when I was talking to him, he, I said, what if there is some Godhead that did this? There seems to me to be a metaphysical element to this, and that we think, and I'll expand on this maybe later in this video, but we think that things are stable because of our actions, that we are in control of these systems, these complex social systems. And at times it may seem that way, or at times it may be that way, but there are things that can happen that are chaotic, that go into a new phase, something totally radical, a phase transition, or a chaotic attraction, and the past thoughts to control the system no longer work. The rules of the game change. All right. And because the United States, this is my take on this, because the United States is not willing to let Israel complete the mission in Gaza with Rafah by holding certain types of weapons, and not accepting this concept of, the covenant and the right to the land biblically, and this march towards the Temple Mount being rebuilt, trying to prevent that. Perhaps some sort of things are happening that will accelerate the process. All right. Remember what I said. I said that in the end, when that happens, I don't know what date or what year, but in the end, there's going to be a larger boundary for Israel. That means the Sinai Peninsula. That means the West Bank. That also means east of the river that goes into Jordan. And it also means parts of Syria and Lebanon. For that to happen, some sort of chaotic event needs to take place. In addition, all of Jerusalem would be held, and the Dome of the Rock comes down and the Temple Mount gets rebuilt. Now, there are some people that disagree with me. That's okay. But I'm just saying this is how I see this. And there is this path towards either a peaceful transition towards that, or a very chaotic, very bloody transition. All right. In addition, because the United States was so worried about instability in the region if Israel struck hard in Iran, and there's some talk that perhaps there was even a nuclear or an EMP contingency on Iran when Israel struck. I don't know. We talked a little bit about that last night between John and I. But there seems to be the hand of God, or a Godhead, that is intervening in these events and causing a chaotic situation where what I call the Westphalian logic and international affairs rules of the game are breaking down. All right. They think that they're going to prevent Israel from doing something to have stability in Iran. And then all of a sudden something happens that causes instability. All right. It seems to me that this was tied to some sort of metaphysical, what I'll call a metaphysical event, where the Iranian president's helicopter went down because God wanted it to go down. Now, I know that sounds really crazy, especially if you're, a pure scientist type. I know that sounds a little crazy if, you are some sort of, you gravitate to Spinoza, all right? But the thing is that we're dealing with, and that's not the case with everything in the world. I don't believe that there's intervention of this kind with everything in the world. But what I do think is that we're in an era where if you keep on going against the grain of what the end result will happen, then certain things will happen that's not going to be in your favor. And there's going to be a chaotic system that is developed or emerges that will expedite the process to this ultimate end. Larger borders, the Dome of the Rock coming down, Temple Mount being rebuilt. All right. I don't find it, it's just a coincidence that this back and forth firing between Israel and Iran and all of the proxy support that Iran gives to Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis and the Yemenites. It's not by accident we're seeing this. There is some sort of retribution that's taking place. If we subscribe to the idea that this is a metaphysical event that we're seeing, something biblical, something where there's the hand of God that's taking place here. Now, it is possible that it was just bad weather, old plane. It is also possible that the Israelis targeted the damn guy. And we'll never know. They'll never come out if it was targeted. But I do find that it's very odd that the United States was so worried about instability from the retaliatory strike from Israel onto Iran. And they have been tying the hands of Netanyahu in terms of Rafah. I find it that this incident leads to instability in the region. And now they don't know who's the next guy in charge after the theocratic leader leaves or dies. And now who's the president? The ones that were potentially the runner-ups are gone now. So that's created a new instability. And I think that's part of the reason why there was kind of a silence. Now, what's odd is what Alex Jones has mentioned and other people have been stating, that the weather pattern has been swiped from record in that region. Now, why? Now, if that's true, I don't know if it's true or not, but let's just assume what Alex Jones is saying is true, and some of the other people on X are saying is true about this weather pattern being swiped. If that's true, then that's more as if some sort of operation took place by the Israelis or the United States or even both. Okay? And it wasn't the hand of God. So, I don't know for sure. No one knows for sure, right? The thing that puts a little bit of a wrinkle into the metaphysical thought is this swiping of the weather. Why would it have been swiped? Now, maybe it was swiped later, to hide some sort of activity that was going on. Or maybe it's weather related. Maybe there's some weather weaponry that we're doing. And, I don't know. It could be some nefarious activities by the U.S. and or the Israelis, or it could be some sort of metaphysical intervention. If we use the Occam's razor approach and try to assume that there isn't some sort of divine intervention, then it most likely was some sort of secret operation by the United States and or the Israelis, potentially even internally within Iran, independent of Israel and the United States. But what I do find is that if the United States wanted to take them out, then they're worried about instability. It seemed like they were worried about instability with the firefight, right, between Iran and Israel recently. Then why would they decapitate the head of state only to cause more instability? So that's where an operation to assassinate doesn't make much sense, because it would cause more instability unless there's a plan to actually move into Iran in the near future and to decapitate, make instability, and then move in. I think Iran is becoming problematic, and that there needs to be the takedown of Iran's military capability and its theocracy, and knock out Hezbollah and Hamas. I've been saying that since October 7th. And we're starting to kind of see that these things are kind of, whatever has emerged from this, we're kind of starting to see it's not out of the realm of possibility that this conflict will increase and knock out these terrorists that are part of the sole root of Esau. So, I'm a little bit more on the metaphysical side, that there was some sort of strange intervention that is almost biblical because of this move towards the Temple Mount being rebuilt and the greater Israel growing. And for greater Israel to grow, that means a larger conflict has to happen. That means land's going to be lost by Egypt, by Jordan, by Syria, and by Lebanon. That means that this has to, whatever happens in this region, has to happen that big for that to come to fruition. All right. So we'll see. We'll see. At this point in time, I think there's a little bit more on the divine intervention side than a military operation. But I do find that if what Alex Jones is saying is true about the weather pattern being swiped, it's strange what's going on there. Some evidence of weather weapon, some evidence of covert operation. Who knows? Who knows?
And Raisi, we cannot say that he was elected as president of Iran. He was selected by Khamenei, and many candidates, including some conservatives, including some allies, Ayatollah Khamenei, were disqualified from running. So we have to see who will be Khamenei's selected president this time around.
So you were imprisoned by the regime. In fact, you can't return to Iran. We know that there's a huge amount of internal dissent in Iran on the one hand, and we also know that Iran is obviously engaged in this geopolitical issues surrounding the Israel-Gaza war. This president is largely ceremonial. Does it affect the balance of power within the regime in any shape or form?
It does. I mean, the president in Iran is like a prime minister in an absolute monarchy. So the prime minister in an absolute monarchy does not have that much power, but still he has his own allies, he has his own power base, and there are certain things that the president can do in Iran. But what is interesting about Raisi compared to the other presidents in Iran was that he did not have a power base of his own. He became a judge.
Are your kids in grades 6 to 11 Harvard has made SAT and ACT score submission optional in its admissions process. If they don't require SAT and ACT scores, how will Harvard and other Ivy League...
First of all, that commercial is an old commercial because Harvard decided to reenact the ACT.
Very early age, around I think 19, 20 years old in 1980. And then he served the regime loyally. He served the Ayatollah Khomeini in the 1980s. He was a member of the Death Committee in 1988. He was one of the 3 people in charge of killing more than 5,000 political prisoners. And then he served the government loyally again as a judge and as the Supreme Leader's representative in the city of Mashhad, being in charge of a very large industrial and commercial complex. And then he became the head of the judiciary. But throughout that time, Raisi was not famous for having a base, having a power base. Other presidents in Iran, Ahmadinejad, Rohani, Khatami, they had their own power bases. Raisi was defined by his loyalty to the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei. And because of that, Khamenei supported him. And the next president will most probably be a person that Khamenei will choose from his supporters who do not have a loyal base of their own, because Khamenei is 85 years old. He won't be living maybe for a long time.
He could be potentially choosing his successor, so it'll be fascinating to see. But thank you so much, Maia Bahari, editor at IranWire.com. We're now going to speak to Dr. Maia Bahari, who teaches the Iran Diplomatic...
Before we go to the next guest, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the structural nano silver liquid. I have max 14 and max 35. I also have structural nano silver solution at different ppms and price points. So take a teaspoon of it a day. If you're not feeling well, take a tablespoon or 2 a day. You gargle with it, you swish it in your mouth for about 20 seconds or so, and then you swallow it. All right? Take it every day, and what that'll do is neutralize pathogens and help boost up your immune system. In addition, I also have the structural nano silver soaps, very high quality soaps. I have it in oatmeal spice, lavender, lemongrass, and peppermint. And the last one I have is charcoal, tea tree. So please go to the store, get the high quality soaps that I offer. Get a couple bars for your house. You'll like it. It's very high quality. In addition, if people purchase the liquid, right, I recommend, if you haven't already purchased, also get the applicator. Because these are big bottles, it's hard to carry in your bag or whatever. And what you would want is to put some liquid in these bottles. All right, this is the 3-set applicator. There's a nasal spray, there's a dropper, and then there's the spritzer. All right, and you just put it in your bag, take it to work, spray a surface. You can also, spray the back of your mouth or your hands because it neutralizes pathogens. And you can use it as a dropper and a nasal spray, especially allergies or, not feeling well because of colds or whatnot. So get the applicator set so you can travel. It'll help you to travel with it in your bag, or you're going to go to work or whatever. I also have structural nano silver gel. This is dual purpose. You put this on your hands, it will stay active for 5 hours. It'll neutralize pathogens, all right? You can put it around your mouth, around your nose, lightly coat your nostrils, around your eyes, around your ears, okay? You can also apply it to a wound to help it to heal because it's keeping it clean. And in addition, it will also help heal abrasions and minor burns. So it's a skincare also. You're going to apply it on your skin even if you have no problem. Apply it on your skin, right before you go to bed, and then exfoliate in the morning. And what you'll notice is your skin is clearer and tighter, especially around your face. Your skin will be tighter. So it's a skincare, and it's also a wound healer, and on top of it, it will help to neutralize pathogens. So please go to the store and get the structural nano silver gel. In addition, go to my store and get the structural nano silver toothpaste. This toothpaste has no fluoride in it. It is the best toothpaste that you're going to be able to get. So get a few tubes of this for your household. Very high quality toothpaste. It'll whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, reduce gum irritation, and with good oral hygiene, you're going to reduce cardiovascular disease and valvular disease. What that basically means is by taking a very good toothpaste like this one, you're going to actually improve your reduce the chances of problems with your heart. Okay, because many people with poor oral hygiene, that plaque gets into the just microscopic pieces of the plaque and get into your bloodstream and cause blockage, and bacteria can get in and cause inflammation in the endothelial lining of the blood vessel or onto your valves in your heart and cause heart disease. So please go to the store and get a very high quality toothpaste. The-studio-reykjavik.com. It's the best toothpaste you're going to be able to get. It's way better than anything Alex Jones sells. So help support my work, not Alex Jones, and get the toothpaste. Get a few tubes of this. This is PNN.
Security Studies course at a university in Israel and is Iranian. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Tell us what the situation is like in Israel, who would obviously, I see they've had to issue a denial. They were involved in the helicopter crash, but obviously Israelis will be watching this with intense interest.
Yes, the question that all Israelis, when Israelis want to know is, will this lead to regime change in Iran? Because Israelis, more than perhaps any other country in this region, want the Islamic Republic to fall, because the 1979 revolution was a disaster for Israel. Before the revolution, Iran and Israel had good relations, and afterwards, the Islamic Republic of Iran decided to become Israel's biggest enemy and to support various proxy groups against Israel. To be honest with you, the absence of Mr. Raisi is not going to change much. He was not, as Maziar said quite accurately before, he was not a major player. He was a loyal foot soldier. He was more of a pawn than anything else for Ayatollah Khamenei. He followed orders. He wasn't a strategic thinker. He wasn't a strategic doer. He didn't have a security background, nor did he have a foreign policy background. So he wasn't.
The future is not just going to happen. You have to make it. And if you want a successful business, all it takes is an idea.
A foreign policy background, so he wasn't much of a player when he came to the Middle East. So we in Israel don't expect much change in his absence. So, and I think that makes it even more unlikely that Israel was behind his death. He's not because he wasn't an important person.
Yes, essentially, you're saying he's a pointless person to assassinate.
In a way, yes, but also, accidents do happen in this region. Not every accident that happens is because of
because of his analysis that he wasn't that much of an important person. All right. I just find it very strange with everything that's going on in the region. So this leads to the thing that we think we understand the system, either who's the important players or who's not. There are people that are not very important and then eventually become very important later in life. All right. If you look at the trajectory of, let's say, Hitler, all right, in his youth and when he was, during his college years in art school, you would think that he would have been a know-nothing, or even when he enlisted in World War I. All right, but he ended up being a major player on the political stage. So, this is why I keep on saying, be careful when you think you understand a complex system, because most likely the moment that you think you understand it, there's something emerging that you don't understand that will radically change your understanding of what's going on. All right. And I think that's what I was trying to convey with John Hogue yesterday. This is that there's a chaotic attraction that's taking place. There's something emerging that we do not understand, and that I'm putting it in the bucket of the metaphysical. All right. Now, it may seem from our lens that it's just an accident. All right. Because he's saying that there was no reason for the Israelis or the United States to knock this guy out because it was inconsequential. I think he was more consequential than you think, especially for the current regime. But, you know, if we take his stance that there was no reason for Israel or the United States to knock this guy out, then most likely there's a bigger dynamic. See, people think linear. And this is the problem that John Scheimer, is it Scheimer? Scheimer, right? He's an international political guy. I believe he's from, I think he's from Chicago, University of Chicago. But he was kind of the three big guys to study in international affairs. It was Kissinger, Mearsheimer, and Zabinski. And well, you know, he just did maybe 3 or 4 days ago. He did a talk over at CSIS. All right, and he was basically blaming the Israelis for just about everything. You know, he's using this kind of like Westphalian logic, international affairs, power, all right? And everything's logical. But when you are dealing with the metaphysical, sometimes things don't become logical. And things, you know, happen and it's emerging, right? And something that seems that is totally implausible in time 1 or time 2 becomes very plausible in time 10. But through logic, you would never think that at time 10 that those situations would come about because they were so implausible or so low in the probability. And this is the point I'm making with the Middle East. These people, these international affairs policy wonks think they understand the system, and they don't. And that things that may seem inconsequential end up being very consequential. All right. So that's my take on it. It's applying chaos theory and, you know, in saying that there is this point in the future, and that what is happening today is leading us towards that eventuality. All right. And that things that if you try to use logic and you think you understand the social system, you would think that would never happen. But yet it has been promised that it would happen. It's been warned to people in biblical texts that it will happen. All right. But the secular class, the gurus of international affairs, the atheists, they don't want to pay attention or think that that's just hocus pocus or whatever. But there's something that's emerging. That's why I said with John last night that it's like some Godhead intervention. There's some sort of intervention that's taking place that creates a chaotic thing that will lead towards this eventuality that I'm talking about in Israel. With that said, please help support my work, because where else are you going to hear about the Godhead intervening and killing the Iranian president, perhaps? Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the D3. It helps to absorb calcium. It'll also help with gene expression. So it's a cofactor for gene expression, so you get proper gene expression. In addition, that'll help to get rid of infected cells through apoptosis. So get D3, it's really important. It's also great for cardiovascular health. I've told you in many videos on how it helps with cardiovascular health. Good night formula, very important to get 3 cycles of REM sleep. Try to get it every night. If you're not getting REM cycle sleep, take the good night formula. It has melatonin and tryptophan and some other compounds in it. But please take this. If you're not sleeping regularly, you'll need this, because the 3 cycles of REM sleep will give you well-restedness. It'll help to detoxify the body. And by getting into REM cycle sleep, you're going to be consolidating memory. So it's really important for overall health and well-being. Make sure that you're getting proper sleep. If you are not getting proper sleep, or you know someone that's not getting proper sleep, take the good night formula, or tell them to take the good night formula. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
But in this case, yes, his death is not going to change much. He wasn't a strategic.
Yes. Let me ask you this then. Inside Iran, there's a huge amount of dissent and obviously opposition to the regime, which is brutally suppressed. We saw pictures of sort of fireworks being let off in the sky, which were an indication, perhaps, at least that's how it was read, of ordinary Iranians perhaps celebrating the death of one of the leading members of the regime. Will it potentially have any impact at all in giving, I mean, this sounds a brutal thing to say after somebody has died, but this is real world and politics, give people, frankly, the feeling that they've scored a victory against this brutal dictatorship?
From what I can see on social media, Iranians are tremendously happy. And I hear the same from Iranians who are based in Europe, who speak to their family and friends in Iran.
This guy is not the best of the bunch, all right? So getting rid of him is going to cause this potential instability. I'm going to diverge a little bit. I've been getting into watching documentaries on the history of France, right? Trying to go all the way back to actually the fall of the Roman Empire and all the infighting that was happening in France, and then so pre-Charlemagne time, and then Charlemagne time period, and then his sons and their sons and all this stuff, and then the modern arc of France. So it's like the history of the Franks and of France, all right? But there's a lot of similarities with I think some of the things that are happening in the United States with political strife, especially with the upper middle class and the poor. There's kind of an aristocratic kind of class that is starting to emerge in the United States, while everyone else is being left behind, and they have the power, right, in politics. So there's this swelling of kind of a revolution that's starting to take place that is beyond. What seems to me emerging in the United States is a French kind of revolution, not an American revolution of 1776. All right, so it's something a little bit different. All right. And it's going to tear the country apart. And how that expansion of the Franks into Austria, right, led to eventually the conflict between France and Germany, in the 1870s, right? That leads to, 1870s, 1880s, 1890s, this swelling that's taking place that leads to World War I, kind of like see this happening, but you have to step back and look at the full arc of that country, right? In France, it's it's followed the Roman Empire all the way to modern day, so it's covering a lot of history, while the United States has a smaller time period to having to explain its full arc of history. Basically it's around 1600s. Some people would say that you can go all the way back to 1492 type stuff, right? But it's small compared to some of these other European countries and their big arc of history. So this instability in France and how these democracies or these regimes just fall apart because of this infighting may actually be taking place, or we're seeing the emergence of it in Iran. And here's that whole chaotic thing that I'm saying is that, yes, a helicopter in the fog crashes or hits this, hits the mountain, right? We don't know if it crashed, did it fall out of the sky and hit the ground, or did it hit the side? The way the pictures look, it was like the side of a mountain kind of thing. Or did it just hit the mountain because of the fog? Who knows? I've never been in a helicopter, and I don't think I ever want to be in a helicopter. But so there's this thing that kind of can be explained on this plane, Oculus, but in a higher plane, there is a God willed it to happen. If God thought that this guy was a great guy and there needed to be some sort of intervention on the positive and keep him alive, then that would have happened. All right, but at a higher level, at a metaphysical level, this incident, even though it may seem somewhat benign, may actually lead to something very chaotic. Hence, in the vein of this turmoil between the people and the ones that are running the government, like we saw in France, same thing could potentially be happening with Iran. I don't think Iran's stable at all, and that it won't take much for a revolution to take place. The question is, will the American policy wonks, will they allow Iran to become a democracy?
Tremendously happy. Number one, because Mr. Raisi was one of the judges who sentenced to death somewhere between 3,000 to 30,000 Iranian prisoners. We're not sure exact number at the end of the 80s. And number two, he was a very close associate of Ayatollah Khamenei, and Ayatollah Khamenei trusted him greatly to carry out these orders. And people of Iran increasingly view the enemy, the Islamic Republic and Ayatollah Khamenei as their enemy. So when one of his foot soldiers dies, this has created a lot of, unfortunately, we have to say, happiness inside Iran. And last but not least, one of the areas where Mr. Raisi did have relative influence, and I emphasize relative, was the economy. And he did a terrible job of it. The inflation, he pushed it up. The inflation was pushed up under his tenure to 45%, which is almost unprecedented average for any post-revolution Iranian president. So not at the very least, you can say not a lot of people are going to miss him.
So that's done. All right, so let's go to Democracy Now! The liberal, God, I can't stand this.
This news is funded by viewers like you. Please support our work.
This woman is such a flaming liberal. God. To help support my work and for me not to have a heart attack by watching flaming liberals like this one from Democracy Now!, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. and get the multivitamin. It has cofactors to help with proper enzymatic activity. That basically means that your cells will be working properly. So please go to the store. There's a whole list of great vitamins in this multivitamin. Go to the store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Take this every day, and it's part of your health protocol. All right? It's easy to digest. It's a very high-quality multivitamin. All my products are very high quality. In addition, boosting up your immune system is really, really important. You should be taking lignans every day. It's a powder. You mix it with your water or food. Take it every day. Why? Because in the post era of 2020, immune systems are disrupted. They're down-regulated, or they, there are issues that people are starting to see, that they're just getting infections more often, or their body just isn't performing pre-2020 levels. Immune systems, many people's immune systems are disrupted. In addition, a disrupted immune system has a higher probability of leading to cancers. So you want to improve your immune system. This is part of this anti-aging protocol that boosts up your immune system. It's important to take lignans to boost up the immune system. This is for males and females. They'll also help with hormonal health and get those hormonal axes working. All right. So, and that means your thyroid, that means your adrenals, that means your, sex axis for males and females. The endocrine system and the immune system work in tandem. A bad endocrine system will mean that you don't have as much of a robust immune system. And a bad immune system, especially autoimmune, could be very detrimental to your endocrine system. So it's really important to have good hormonal health and good immune health. I can't stress this enough, all right? Now, I can get really fancy with the medicine of this, on how these systems work, but go to the store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get this powder and take it every day and boost up your immune system on top of the other things I've been telling you. The immune system needs to be robust. It helps to fight cancers. It helps to prevent pathogens. It helps to get your body in homeostasis. So good hormonal health and good immune health is super important. Now, many people have, especially when they listen to crazy liberals like this one, get brain fog. All right. To prevent brain fog, please go to my store and get the Clarity Factor. Clarity Factor will help to get those dendrites firing, get those neurotransmitters firing, and those dendritic connections, those dendritic connections between the neurons, right? You'll have a presynaptic nerve and a postsynaptic nerve, and the cleft, the space between them, and that shoots a neurotransmitter. Well, if you're not firing properly or something's blocking it, you're not getting the signal to your postsynaptic nerve, and you'll start to have these things recede. There's a recession that takes place. So there's the dendritic recessions that are taking place, and that's part of aging. We can slow that down by staying active, training your brain, reading, writing, talking to people, thinking positive, all right, and taking clarity factor, and you get those neurons firing and get those dendritic connections to get more robust, and you'll be thinking quicker, and you're going to consolidate memory better. We're all going to age, but we don't have to age fast. We can age slow. All right. So the key here is to take that many people have brain fog these days. Now, in addition to taking the clarity factor, you should be taking the other supplements that I've been talking about, but you should also filter your water. No fluoride in the water makes you stupid. All right. And stay away from processed foods and foods that are GMO. That way you're detoxifying your body from all that crap that modern society is putting into your food supply. And you're getting those dendrites to fire and get those better connections, right? And by doing that, you're going to improve your memory. And then over time, in a very short amount of time, you're actually going to have that fog go away, and you're going to actually think quicker. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the clarity factor. Now, perhaps if she took the clarity factor of this liberal from Democracy Now!, maybe she'd be a Republican.
democracynow.org/give. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The Iranian president, Ibrahim Raisi, and the foreign minister, Hossein Amir Abdullahi, were killed on Sunday in a helicopter crash along with 6 other officials and crew. Iranian state TV gave no immediate cause of the crash after wreckage of the helicopter was found early Monday in a mountainous region of Iran's northwest following an overnight search in blizzard conditions. Raisi was returning from Iran's border with Azerbaijan to inaugurate a dam when the crash happened. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, declared 5 days of public mourning, announced Vice President Mohammad Mokhtar would serve as Iran's acting president until elections are held. The 63-year-old Raisi was elected in 2021 in a vote that saw the lowest percentage turnout in the Islamic Republic's history after major opposition candidates were disqualified from taking part. For more, we're joined in Washington, D.C. by Trita Parsi, Executive Vice President of the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft. Trita, welcome back to Democracy Now! If you can just respond to what
I don't know if you noticed, but there's definitely an asymmetry with her face. She seems to have muscle tension issues on her. When you're looking at the picture here, it would be her left side. Okay, so on the right side of the picture, and this the face is just not. There's asymmetry there. Definitely asymmetry. I wouldn't say it's a Bell palsy kind of thing, but definitely there's something wrong
there. Iran. Talk about the death of the president and the foreign minister and what this means.
This is, of course, a major event in Iran. Both the president and the foreign minister and several others have died. And it's something that is...
Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft. See what I mean? There's a bunch of social engineers that are trying to just, put their theories of international policy at work to force some sort of consensus and new world order. You know what? It's really simple. Have a constitution and have the people decide on how they want to be governed within the context of the Constitution. And those rights that are enshrined in those constitutions are rights for all the people. I'll tell you, we have way too many people that sit in a chair and talk about or try to persuade powerful people on certain international policies. And it's leading to an interconductivity and interconnectedness within the world that is becoming unstable, not more stable. People like this make the world a worse place, not a better place, because they think that they can socially engineer it. It's like people that think they can socially engineer the economy, all right? The economy is a chaotic thing. Nature is chaotic, all right? Yeah, you need some rules so there's property rights and stuff, right? But to think that you can engineer the economy, or if you think you can engineer societies, it doesn't usually go very well, because that leads towards socialism and lots of corruption and eventually decline and destruction and then rebirth.
In Iran, both the president and the foreign minister and several others have died. And it's something that is coming at a time when the Iranians already have an extremely low participation rate in the elections, and now they're going to have elections within the next 50 days. As you pointed out, the only reason why Raisi got elected in the first place was because the majority of the population actually boycotted the elections and refused to partake, because of the fact that the conservatives had shrunk the political spectrum in Iran and refused other candidates who were not conservatives to be able to even run in the first place. Now the regime is going to have to try to whip up and mobilize voters and excitement for an election within 50 days, and it has to make a decision. Is it actually going to allow other candidates to stand, or is it going to continue on the path that it has set out for itself, in which these elections increasingly become rather meaningless in terms of actual democratic value? And this is coming at a time when the regime is facing other potential crises, including the secession that will take place within a couple of years when the current supreme leader Ayatollah Khamenei passes away. And again, Raisi was considered to be a potential candidate for that position, but obviously no longer.
Now think about that.
If you could talk about
everyone is talking about a hot war, all right? And John and I talked about it last night. John Hogue, all right? And the hot war, there's different thoughts. The hot war is like immediate and it's like very delineated, or you can have a hot war that is smoldering, slow, very similar to World War I or World War II, right? It just kind of slowly kind of tiptoes right into a larger and larger conflict, all right? So from the United States point of view, as we said last night, it seemed like World War II started in 41. Well, really, it started 2 years before that, all right? So and some people could say that perhaps even farther back, all right, depending on where you want to delineate it. But the point here is to say many world conflicts slowly emerge into a larger conflict. If the theocrat dies 2 years from now, all right, we're talking 2026 or 2025, depending on when he dies, all right? Well, you have the conflict that's going on in Europe. You have the conflict that's going on in the Middle East. You have a worry in 2025, the Taiwan being taken over by China. So this is what I mean by, you think the system is stable, you think you understand the dynamics of the system, you think that everything can be controlled, and then all of a sudden something happens and it's not. This is the point I'm making. And certain people that are key players on stage are exiting and others are coming in that are unknown. And because of all these unknown variables, something catastrophic can emerge.
Raisi's record, who he was, how close he was to the supreme leader, and also the foreign minister.
So Raisi was not particularly well known until a couple of years ago because he had spent most of his time in the judiciary. He's a clergy. He is related by marriage to the supreme leader. And frankly, has not been a particularly impactful president or influential president. At the end of the day, he seems to have been selected precisely because he was pliant to the supreme leader, because he would not do what previous presidents had done, which was to actually challenge the supreme leader and the hardline establishment. Raisi clearly has not done that. But if we were to take a look at what are the main policies that he's been driven, it's really difficult to identify that. Imagine if this had happened to Hassan Rohani, the previous president, during the height of the nuclear negotiations, for instance. It would have thrown a major wrench into those negotiations precisely because Rohani was such a strong driving force for resolving the nuclear issue diplomatically. There is no equivalent to that with Raisi being a key driving force of such a policy or any major policy in which his absence will actually be particularly felt. If anything, most of the current policies of the Islamic Republic are likely going to continue unabated, even with him being absent from the scene.
We don't know the exact cause of the crash, although weather has certainly been talked about. I wanted to read this from AP, Trita. Iran flies a variety of helicopters in the country, but international sanctions make it difficult to obtain parts for them. Its military air fleet also largely dates back to before the 1979 Islamic Revolution. There are no published images. It described as Raisi taking off in what resembled a Bell helicopter with a blue and white paint scheme previously seen in published photographs. And, you know, you have Washington Post saying Iran hampered by sanctions from getting parts and maintenance materials for government aircraft has suffered several high-profile helicopter crashes in recent years. Talk about this.
Yeah, so few countries have as many aircraft and helicopter crashes as Iran, which to a very large extent is due to the fact that the U.S. sanctions have prevented them from being able to service those planes and get spare parts for them. In fact, as part of the nuclear deal, the Iranians were going to buy a large number of Boeing aircraft, as well as getting Boeing to service the planes that Iran already had, its fleet mainly coming from the 1960s and 70s. Boeing executives actually their technicians actually went to Iran to investigate the planes and return, and concluded that they would not service those planes because they were in such a bad shape that Boeing did not want to take on the liability of having serviced them because they would likely crash even with that service, and Boeing would be liable at that point. So it refused to actually service those planes. That tells you something about how bad of a shape the Iranian fleet is, and this is, of course, overwhelmingly as a result of the sanctions.
The former foreign minister, Mohammad Javad Zarif, blamed the United States because of the embargo weakening their fleet, saying these will be recorded in the list of U.S. crimes against the Iranian people. Trita.
So this is obviously a line that many in the government will take in Iran and point to these sanctions. But I think there's also another message that comes with this, which is that they're really pointing to this being an accident. And this is an effort for them to put to rest any speculation that perhaps there was some foul play, whether it was internal players or external players. At this moment, for instance, they will be adamant about denying that that Israel had anything to do with this, despite the fact that under normal circumstances, they would be rather quick to blame the Israelis. It would simply be too embarrassing to admit or even entertain the idea that the Israelis have the capacity to be able to essentially kill the Iranian president and foreign minister. I want to be very clear here. There's no evidence that Israel was involved. I'm just raising this as a point as to why they are very active in trying to blame this on an accident. It is because they want to put to rest any such rumors, not only because of the embarrassment, but also because they do not want to see an intensified infighting inside of the regime, mindful of the fact that Raisi was a contender for the next supreme leader.
Of course, Raisi was in charge during the crackdown on protests that led to the deaths of many and imprisonment of many others. after the death of Massanini. And then this weekend, we got word that the BBC reported that the jailed Iranian Nobel Peace Prize winner, Narges Mohammadi, says she's facing a new trial after she accused the security forces of sexually assaulting women. She said in her statement that she was dragged to the unjust and farcical court's table again due to her protest and disclosure of the religious regime's men's sexual assault against women. What will happen now that Raisi and the foreign minister are dead when it comes to, you think, protest, when it comes to what's happening with
Why didn't she ask the question about the support that Iran has with Hezbollah, the Houthis, and Hamas? Knocking this guy out, either metaphysically, by accident because of the weather, or some sort of operation by the Israelis or the U.S. or both. It could be a good thing. I don't like her. There's something about her that I just do not like. Please go to my store, the-studio-Reykjavik, the-studio-Reykjavik.com. Click the link in the description for the-studio-Reykjavik.com. I'm a little tired. And get the ashwagandha root. This will help to control the blood glucose levels. In addition, it will help to bring down inflammation. You take it with the turmeric, which is an antioxidant, and it brings down inflammation. And this is part of that other aspect of the protocol, bring down inflammation. Inflammation is a key driver for disease. Bring down that, and you're reducing the chronicness of these diseases. Now, it's very important to take a probiotic. I have two types of probiotics. I have it in a capsule kind of form, and I also have it in a powder form. I take the powder. There's a scooper in here. You take 1 scoop a day, you mix it with food, or you mix it with water, and you take it. It's important that you take a probiotic every day to get a good gut biome, because it has been found that a good gut biome will help you to absorb energy, improve the that inner lining of your gut, right? The cells that are facing the lumen, and so you're getting energy absorption. In addition, by having a good gut biome, you're going to have proper metabolism and that communication between your gut and your liver and your gut and your brain. It has been found that certain bacteria that's not in the gut, all right, if you don't have them, people will have a tendency to become depressed, okay? So depression can be linked to, but not the only reason for depression, but can be linked to poor gut health, all right? In addition, and this is just a strange fact that I read recently, our body, all right, has 1 trillion or more cells. There are 40 trillion bacteria cells in the average human body, right? That's healthy. In addition, there are 10 times that in number of viral particles in the human body. Now, not all bacteria are bad for the body, obviously, and not all viruses are bad for the body, all right? And the key here is realizing that we live in a give and take environment for good health, all right? So if you had no bacteria in your body, you would die, all right? You would be sterile, and because you're sterile, there's certain processes that our body doesn't do that we piggyback for bacteria, and there's things that we do for the bacteria that they can't do by themselves. So we live in an environment where it's symbiotic. So it's fascinating that if you take the weight of the human body and all the bacteria, right, and all the viruses, you put them all together, it would weigh almost the size of the brain. Now that, to me, to me, sounds absolutely amazing. That we live in this kind of environment where we're working together. All right, so it's important to have a good gut biome. All right, but it's not just the gut biome; it's the microbiome. All right, it's like all on our skin, in our oral cavity, in our gut, everywhere in our body. Right. So, but it's just fascinating, and there's so many more bacterium in terms of numbers, cell numbers, compared to the number of cells that are human cells. So I just find that symbiosis is interesting. So when we have GMO foods, or if we have poor diet or a lot of processed foods, or some sort of infection that is, it disrupts the microbiome of the body, then the health of the body starts to go down. So it's important to get the body into proper homeostasis. So go to the store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the probiotic that I have here. I take this every day, and improve your gut health. All right, but it's also the idea here is that you want to improve your immune system. So the pathogens that are bad for you, all right, the microorganisms that are bad for you are neutralized, and that your body is reaching that normal homeostasis. But it's just interesting that there's such a orchestration of chemicals being produced and absorbed between our cells, the human cells, and bacterial cells, and how they work together for proper health. So please go to my store and get the probiotic. So that's a little bit of a little lesson about symbiosis. In addition, please go to my store and get the resveratrol. This will help to get rid of senesced cells. You need to get rid of senesced cells, because senesced cells are cells that stop dividing and they're usually kind of dormant, and they accumulate over time toxins. So you want to get rid of them, and that usually signals adult stem cells in those tissues that do have adult stem cells. At the basal layer, they will be activated and start to repopulate and create a new cell. That way, if you get rid of your senesced cells, and the cells that you have that are in that tissue are healthy through proper supplementation and diet, exercise, and all this stuff, the whole protocol that I keep on telling about. If you do the proper things, then those tissues over time will improve, and you'll actually slow the aging process. Now, when you look at someone that is not on the protocol versus someone that is, there's a huge divergence that starts to take place. All right, especially around 5 years, huge. Like, for example, if you're not on this protocol that I'm telling you, and let's say you were at some sort of an alumni event, or you're with your friends that you haven't seen for years, all right, and that's time zero, where no one's on a protocol. And then let's say you get on a protocol and you have an alumni event or a friend event or family event 5 years later. You'll notice that they have been aging at a faster rate than you because of the things that I've been telling you about. The filtered water, the proper food and diet, the proper supplementation, the exercise, the types of exercising and stretching and the mental exercises. When you do all of these things that I'm saying, that just in a 5-year period is huge benefits, especially if you're following the D3, K2, MK7, ashwagandha, and turmeric protocol for cardiovascular health. All right. So, and the C60. So, when you do that, you're just the benefits are just compound. All right. But the key is to do it on a regular basis, because one, you're going to have more energy and you're going to have more longevity and vitality, right? And you're mitigating problems down the road that other people will have. Now, yes, it may cost money to follow these kinds of protocols, but you're going to pay more later, and your life is going to be at risk because of disease later in life, like heart disease and diabetes and problems with mental acuity, Parkinson's, and all these other problems that start to manifest when someone gets 65, in their 70s. But if you're doing a protocol for many decades, right? When you get to your age, to the 70s, then you're mitigating, you're slowing down aging process, and you're reducing the chances of these types of diseases. Now, it doesn't mean that it is a silver bullet. It's not. It's not a silver bullet. But the thing is that you're lowering the chances of these types of diseases to come about, because diseases are partially genetic, partially environmental. All right. And it's our lifestyle choices. Now, if someone's older and is just starting on an anti-aging protocol, there are benefits by doing that. And then over time, you're going to see more and more of those benefits. But you really get huge benefits. You see the major, when I am around people of my age, all right, I am viewed as someone that is much younger, and they don't really realize that in some cases I'm slightly older than them. And like, for example, you look at Alex Jones. Alex Jones is younger than I am, all right, but he looks a lot older, all right. So you just listen to what I'm saying, and it works, all right. But I can only lead a horse to the water. I can't force the horse to drink the water. So it's up to you. So please go to my store and get the resveratrol. It's part of the anti-aging protocol to get rid of senescent cells. Vitamin C, good for your skin, but it also helps with the immune system. If you're not feeling well, take a double dose of it. The reason why it helps with the skin is it cross-links with collagen when you drink about 64 ounces of water.
Herself being dragged to court again.
I don't think this is going to be very likely to be an event that will cause new protests. At the end of the day, I think the very large number of people in Iran who are very, very unhappy with this regime recognize that Raisi was not that important of a figure. It would be a completely different situation when the supreme leader passes, for instance. I think you will see the regime orchestrate a tremendous amount of show of force, extra security in order to minimize any such risk. But you're not likely going to see this galvanizing into a moment of protest. And part of the reason for that is that the Mahsa Amini protest, unfortunately, from the standpoint of the protest, they did not yield the type of changes that they wanted. It certainly changed Iran society's perspective on the hijab, but not the call for the collapse of the regime as a whole. And it has led to a situation in which the population who earlier on and still have kind of lost faith in the change through the ballot box and now also lost faith in change through revolution. So I don't find this to be very likely to lead to that type of instability in the country or protest.
And what does this mean for the Middle East? You have Hamas and Hezbollah expressing condolences. You have, though, next week, wasn't the United States and Iran to be in Oman meeting through a third party with Iran overall in these last months, saying they were tamping down attacks on the United States?
I don't see this having any impact on Iran's relations with Hezbollah or Hamas. But I do think the latter point that you raised is an important one. Over the course of the last couple of weeks, we have seen how the United States and Iran have negotiated quietly behind the scene in order to be able to temper their own tensions and get an end to the attacks by Iraqi and Syrian militias that have been aligned with Iran against U.S. troops. The Iranians did put pressure on them to cease those attacks because the Iranians don't want to see a broader war in the region. If this leads to some sort of a debilitating crisis, not an existential crisis for the regime, but one in which they will be somewhat paralyzed in the foreseeable future, it can lead to a situation in which their control over some of these militias will weaken further, and that some of them, many of them are more hawkish than Iran, more eager to take on the U.S., will actually restart their attacks on the United States. That would obviously be a very bad situation for the U.S. and the Biden administration, particularly mindful of the upcoming elections.
Trudy Parsi, I want to thank you for being with us, Iranian American, Executive Vice President of the Quincy Institute.
This is Democracy Now! Even though they're ultra-liberal and they want to create chaos and destruction and socialism. Democracy Now! Yeah. It's a constitutional republic. Constitutional republic. All right, let's see what Bolton has to say. Because he is a person that doesn't really like...
It won't make your coffee, but it will help crush your sales goals. Dialpad AI for customer service, sales, and team collaboration. All in one app.
For more, we want to bring in Ambassador John Bolton. Ambassador, thank you so much. I know you have served in very high offices, including during the Trump administration. You were the U.S. ambassador also to the UN under George W. Bush. So a lot of insight to take into consideration here. President Raisi, he was seen as Ayatollah Khomeini's handpicked choice. He oversaw some violent crackdowns on anti-government protests we've seen in recent years. And as well, he oversaw the first direct attack on Israel by Iran. So what does his death mean for the country and for the broader region?
Well, I think in terms of the broader region, in today, tomorrow, the next day, it won't mean that much of a change from what Iran has been doing, waging a proxy war against Israel through Hamas and other terrorist groups. I think, if anything, as the regime in Tehran tries to distract the attention of the Iranian people, they may torque up the pressure from Hezbollah, from the Houthis, the Shia militia groups in Iraq and Syria against Israel. So, but by and large, the direction of that policy is not going to change in the immediate future. However, on domestic affairs, this is a huge development. The regime is about as unpopular as it's been since the Islamic Revolution in 1979, and Raisi had a key role in what was largely predicted to happen. Now, he's president of Iran. But the person who is really in charge is the supreme leader, the Ayatollah Khamenei. It has a certain ring to it, the title supreme leader. But Iran has only had two supreme leaders. There's no clear mechanism for a transfer of power. There's no constitution that requires one person to be selected over another. There's no vice supreme leader. And
there have been other nations, even Western nations, that had this concept of supreme leaders. And, even in France, this idea that there would be a emperor or a supreme leader that's, governing the territory, is in, their history and other countries' histories. But they usually don't last. It creates instability, and a revolution takes hold. And usually that revolution is bloody. It's not a peaceful transition. So I am starting to think that Iran potentially could be having an uprising. Now, with that said, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Link is in the description of this video, and get the honey and lemon drops. There's 100 count for the drops. I also have it in blueberry in 100 count, and I have elderberry zinc in a 21 count, which are larger lozenges. So please go to the store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Why is this important? Why are these lozenges important? It has the structural nanosilver. They'll help to boost your immune system, neutralize those pathogens, soothe that irritation in your throat, and they taste great. All right. We are in the spring season, right? And because it's especially on the East Coast, there's been a lot of rain, we're in kind of an allergy season. Even John Hogue, that's on the West Coast, he's also, noticing that, allergies and, allergens are, floating around, maybe more so this year than previous years. So get this type of product. The honey and lemon, the blueberry, or the elderberry zinc on my store. Get a couple bags for your house, because the moment you start feeling, a little bit of an irritation because of the allergies, from the pollen or whatever from outside, if you catch it early, you will not have that allergic reaction, which is typically a type 1 hypersensitivity reaction. So, take my advice on this so it doesn't become, more problematic. This year, I have been saying for the last 2 months that this is going to be an allergy year. So please go to my store and get the lozenges and the drops. Get a couple bags for your home. You're going to be thanking me later. Trust me on this. So the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description section of this video.
Raisi, as you said, was thought to be the leading contender that would to be made president first to help achieve a smoother succession. With Raisi gone, there's no backup to replace him as president. And the Ayatollah Khamenei's son actually was also thought to be a contender to replace his father. So there's a real risk here in a fragile situation that if the opposition in Iran begins to make itself felt again, that the regime could find itself in very unstable, uncharted territory.
And it's already unstable. In Iran's vice president, Mohammed Akbar, is now acting president. From what I've seen from the state-run media, this person oversees the government. But you said it time and time again, Ayatollah Khamenei, he is the one who is in charge. What do we know about this vice president? And will he really be just in that position almost symbolically?
Well, it's according to the Constitution, which really doesn't mean anything if the Supreme Leader decides to the contrary, but there'll be what they call a presidential commission with this acting president and other Iranian officials, basically charged in the next couple of months to set up an election for a full-time president. So at least in theory, they're in kind of a holding pattern, kind of a caretaker government to get a new election set up. But I'm not sure they're going to be ready to do it in 50 days. This is not a free and fair election situation. An institution called the Guardian Council, which is made up of very hardline Shia clerics, basically determines who can run and who can't run. So they're really going to have to start that process almost from scratch.
Right. Thanks for watching, everybody. Go to joinnn.com to find News Nation on your television.
Okay, so I want to go to Fox News. This is going to be the last video I do for this section, for this video. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. I have C60. I have it in 2 ounce, 4 ounce, and an 8 ounce configuration. I have it in avocado, which is this one. I also have it in coconut, MCT coconut oil, and also extra virgin olive oil. Take a teaspoon of it a day, and that will neutralize free radicals. By neutralizing free radicals, you're going to reduce the stress in the cell, you're going to improve your mitochondrial health, and you're going to increase energy because your mitochondria are going to be working better because most of your ATP is created in the mitochondria. By also improving your mitochondria, you're going to be able to think better. All right? You're going to have more energy. You're going to be moving around better. Right? Your neurons need a lot of mitochondria to shoot those neurotransmitters. So produce those neurotransmitters. So please go to the store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. When you neutralize the free radicals on a regular basis, what will happen is that your tissue will get healthier and that there's less aging that's happening at the cellular level and at the tissue level. Therefore, your organs are going to perform better. And when your organs are performing better, your endocrine system performs better. When your endocrine system performs better, you are reaching homeostasis. In addition, when your cells are performing better, your immune system is performing better. So this is a very potent antioxidant. Take a teaspoon of it a day, especially on an empty stomach, for better absorption. If you work out, take it before your workout. You're going to recover quicker because you're neutralizing those free radicals as you're producing them while you're working out. All right. So please go to my store and get the C60 in either avocado oil, MCT coconut oil, or in extra virgin olive oil. All right. Go to the store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Not playing.
Sir, good morning too. I have a number of things to talk to you about.
Good morning. Just a.
I think we had 3.5.
Because I met a lot of the people at Fox because Fox was affiliated with Catholic Charities for its events like the gala events, and so their news anchors would come to the event. So I've met a lot of people. I've met Sean Hannity, Bremer, Megyn Kelly when she was part of Fox, Judge Jeannie, and some others. But the key, even Bill O'Reilly when he was part of Fox. But when it comes to Bill Hemmer, he in person looks like such a wuss. He's such a wuss. I mean, it's amazing. He's totally different in person.
House Armed Service Committee, Foreign Affairs Committee, sir, good morning too. I have a number of things to talk to you about.
Yeah, morning.
The wheels of justice grind slowly here in New York, I tell you. I think we had 3.5 days of court last week. It looks like maybe 3.5 days this week, maybe 3.5 days next week. Right now, they're arguing on this defense expert witness. Eric Sean just mentioned his name, Brad Smith. I don't know if he's going to be allowed to testify or not, but what is your state of affairs as you see it from afar right now?
Well, Bill, you nailed it. As the wheels of justice crawl along every day that this drags on, President Trump isn't out on the campaign trail where he should be. And I was there last week, and Bill, the thing that jumped out at me was seeing Biden's number 3 official from the Department of Justice, who should be up in Washington doing whatever DOJ does, but instead is on a leave of absence and sitting in a New York municipal courtroom just feet away from the man, Donald J. Trump, who is ahead in 5 out of 6 swing states. And if that isn't the poster child for what this is, which is election interference, I don't know what is. Why is the DOJ helping out a local DA? Do they not want this to turn out how Fani Willis in Georgia turned out? I think that's the question all of us should be asking.
In addition to that, over the weekend, there was news out of Iran when there was a diplomatic mission from the Iranian officials to Azerbaijan. On the way back, there was a helicopter crash confirming by them today, late last night, that Raisi, the leader, well, not the supreme leader, but the president, he was killed in that crash along with the foreign minister. Here's what Dan Hoffman said about that earlier today.
I think we're going to see the continuation of the general contours of Iranian foreign policy, meaning domestic repression, carrying on support to Hamas and their so-called axis of resistance against Israel and the United States, and then fortifying their relationship, their alliance with this new axis of tyranny, Russia, China, and North Korea.
So while if that continues, what do you think the Biden administration should do now?
Well, first, I just want to say good riddance to Raisi. No one should be shedding a tear for the butcher of Tehran that was responsible for the deaths of tens of thousands of dissidents as a prosecutor, and then, of course, shooting schoolgirls in the street, literally in the Masa Amini protest, the girl who was murdered by state police for not wearing a hijab. So good riddance to Raisi.
He's bringing a good point. This is the reason why there's this infighting within Iran. There are people that want a democracy. There are people that want secular freedoms, but there's this theocracy that is controlling the population. Now, if some sort of event takes place, either divine or by accident, or some nefarious actors take them out, right? It potentially will be the wedge that is needed to start the revolution, start the takedown of the theocracy and something that's more democratic that will flourish. What my worry is that the United States always seems to pick the wrong path. They feel as though, for whatever reason, it seems as though that the United States history is not about moving towards democratic ideals for other countries. They want people that they can control. So they need some sort of theocrat or some sort of autocrat kind of government. So we'll see what happens, but hopefully there is some sort of revolution that takes place in Iran that moves towards democratic ideals. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. I have 2 types of deodorant. I have the citrus, and I also have peppermint, lavender, and tea tree. Both of these deodorants are for males and females. It has no baking soda in it, and it has no aluminum in it. It's made from essential oils from the Himalayas. It's a very high quality deodorant bar. Get a couple bars for your household, and it'll also, because of the high quality of the ingredients, will help to detoxify your body. So it's dual purpose. Very high quality deodorant bar. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. In addition, there is also a even better bar on my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. And by getting the even better bar, it will help with bug bites, to help to heal and stop the itch of the bug bite. You can put it on a muscle if there's a muscle ache, it'll help to relieve the muscle ache. You can rub it on abrasion and help to heal the abrasion, or a cut, help to heal the cut, or a minor burn. In addition, if you apply it on your skin as a skincare, every day, then you'll notice that your skin is softer and smoother. So the even better bar on my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, is also a multi-purpose bar. So, and that bar is also made from essential oils from the Himalayas. So please go to the store, get the even better bar for skin health, and also the deodorants, very high quality for males and females.
That much of a difference. The president is more like a chief operating officer. It's the Ayatollah that really matters. The thing to watch, though, is the secession plan for the Ayatollah. If we're going to see drastic changes in Iran, if we're going to see internal stability, the Ayatollah is quite elderly, could die at any minute. Raisi was seen as a key part in helping with the transition to the Ayatollah's son. So that's what we're keeping an eye on. But in terms of just replacing the president and major shifts in Iranian policy, I don't see major changes. To answer your question, Dana, the thing the administration should be doing is making the regime worry about its own internal stability. The thing the regime cares the most, more than destroying Israel, more than supporting terrorism, is its own internal survival. And the thing it needs to do that is cash. So we should be enforcing the sanctions, going back to maximum pressure, making the Ayatollah's inner circle wonder, maybe there's some infighting there, wonder how secession's going to go. And the more Iran has to look internally, the more it's scared about its own stability, then the less time, effort, and energy it has to attack Israel and support terrorism and destabilize the world.
Well, it's obvious that the Trump team had a different take on Iran and how it wanted to deal with it. And the Biden team went back to the days of the Obama administration, where they want to have a relationship with this regime. And you're right about the Ayatollah. He pretty much calls the shots, and it looked like he was trying to prop Raisi up. But that now will end. You called him the butcher of Tehran? Jillian Turner reports from the State Department that Iran executed 853 people last year, many of them women and teenagers, political dissidents among them. This year, more than 200 people have been executed so far, including 2 women just 2 days ago, Congressman.
No, that's right. And they didn't just disappear, as awful as that is, into some state prison. Many of them were hung in the streets, children, teenagers, to send a message to the schoolgirls that were daring to protest the regime. So this regime's brutality cannot be overstated. Yet we just had a senior administration official, Brett McGirt, secretly meeting with the regime in Oman just a few weeks ago. So the concessions appeasement approach from this administration just doesn't seem to be changing. They have to do a 180 on their Iran policy, and that would solve so much in terms of Gaza, Hezbollah, and the Houthis and the instability in the regime. Go back to maximum pressure and make the regime worry about its own survival and its own financial stability.
One practical thing they could do to make them worry about their stability is to take down as much as possible to be able to help provide actual internet access, free internet access to people where they are not being censored. Because some of the things that were coming out yesterday from Iran, the ridicule about the regime, the desire for people to get their information out, to find out what's happening in the world, and for all of us to hear from them, that is one practical thing that they could do. And quickly, I'll give you a final word on that.
Well, that's right. The protest with Masa Amini started with the Kurds, our friends with the Kurds, and we should be helping our friends. Yet they can't even get a meeting with Biden's State Department. And secondarily, Dana, we passed the SHIP Act, which would put secondary sanctions on Chinese buyers of Iranian oil. You put those sanctions in place, you dry up the oil. 90% of illegal Iranian oil is going to China. And again, you go back to that maximum pressure and you will solve the problem.
Congressman, thank you for being with us this morning.
Yeah, appreciate that. Thank you. We'll talk again soon. Michael Waltz, Republican from Florida.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian. So that's my coverage with the Iranian situation, with the helicopter crash and the death of the prime minister. please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the ebooks, get the supplements, get the lecture series in pulmonology and immunology. In addition, please make sure you subscribe to all my channels. All the links are in this video, so subscribe to all 4 YouTube channels. I have Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. I have Patreon if you'd like to be a paid member on Patreon to help support my news coverage. You can also donate on my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, through Stripe, PayPal, or Buy Me a Coffee. Please share the links. Thank you for listening, and thank you for supporting my work and sharing your take on what's going on in the chat and in the comments section. Have a nice day.